Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Future of XYZ. We are speaking about another super interesting and rather progressive business topic, the future of open hiring. And we are speaking today with someone who knows a lot about this, as is often the case with us. Joseph Kenner is the CEO of Greyston. Greyston is a foundation and a bakery. We'll talk about what they do. He's also spent a few decades in public service. Is well overeducated, I would say. Spent 14 years in the financial markets before joining Greyston in 2018 and 2020 as CEO. Joe, thanks so much for joining us on Future of XYZ today.
Thank you so much. In a few decades, I don't know about that.
Fair, okay. I think it was 14
years.
Well, most listeners who are going to be hearing this or watching this episode probably have no idea what Greyston does. Yeah. But most people, at least in the United States, will have tasted what you guys do as the Greyston Bakery, who provides all the brownies in most of the Ben & Jerry's flavors that have brownies. Yeah. So you guys have had that long-standing relationship with the Unilever. You have it with many other companies as well. So you have this bakery and you have this foundation. And one of the things that you guys are known for and have pioneered is this concept of open hiring, and that's what we're talking about today. Will you just help people understand a little bit what open hiring actually is?
Yes, thank you so much. And to your point, we've had a long-standing relationship with Ben & Jerry's Unilever since 1988, 89. The bakery has been around since 1982, so we are now 42 years in operation. And most people may know product because you probably had the brownies in a pint of chocolate fudge brownie ice cream from Ben & Jerry's, but people may not know about the folks who made it. And those are our bakery apprentices that are hired through this form of hiring called open hiring. And essentially, that is what it means. We don't do any background checks or interviews or resumes for these positions. Folks traditionally had to just put their name on a physical list where it's like a one-pager. You just provide your name, phone number, email address. And as we need people that we call in for production, if you're next on the list, you got the job automatically. And what that means is you report for an orientation period. It's like a 2-day orientation where we introduce you to the organization, the core values, what you'll be doing. You bring you on the floor, and it begins a 6-month plus apprenticeship where you learn the job. And then you eventually, what we would call, quote unquote, graduate to become a line worker, meaning you've kind of demonstrated yourself and your capability to be a good worker and hopefully a great future either with us or with someone else. And then we could get into who it's really lends itself well to, but that is essentially the model. Very radical, but it's something we've been doing for 42 years. And I'm blown away coming from a kind of a conservative corporate background, what this can do, not just for the organization or that operates this model, but for those it actually impacts.
Well, I mean, it's a fantastic lead-in. And I think that the next question I am always curious about is, okay, so who benefits from this open hiring? You've talked about the impact of the business, which we'll get to, but like specifically, who benefits? Who is otherwise not included in the hiring process potentially?
Yeah, and this is our history and really part of the mission of both the foundation and the bakery. And I know we'll get into the two entities, but the folks that really benefit from this are those folks who have been traditionally excluded from the labor market. We talk about employment barriers, and that may be like a jargony term, but it really means the justice-involved individual, the person that's homeless, English as a second language, a refugee, people that are on public assistance. All of those people we have employed either now or at one point in time, but it's those folks who have just been told no because they just haven't been able to present themselves, their capabilities, and what they can do to an organization that's kind of looking at those things to determine if you're a quote unquote fit within the organization. So if you look at our population now, 98% are persons of color, 30% are women, and what's really interesting about the population, and we surveyed last year, 25% of those who came through open hiring, they were unemployed for a year or more. So just think about what that would mean to you if you were out of work for a year. Those are the folks that we're targeting. One or more barriers to employment. They may lack social capital. They may lack work experience or education experience, but we bring you in with the trust that, you want to be successful. You resolve to be successful. And we're going to give you that opportunity. And I always say this is an opportunity, not a promise. To the point you raised earlier, we're making products for quality companies like Ben & Jerry's, Unilever, and Whole Foods. So you do have to perform, and we could talk about that later, but this is an opportunity, not a promise.
I mean, obviously, some of these barriers, being involved in the judicial system, right? I mean, being not necessarily having your permit to work, not having a disability. These are things that are very in the spotlight in the United States at the moment. Is this a U.S. only opportunity, or is open hiring something that is happening in other places beyond the United States?
Yeah, I'm very proud to say we have a partnership with another nonprofit in the Netherlands called Start Foundation, and they are doing open hiring over there with smaller companies that either manufacturing or provide services. They are probably about 300 plus opportunities that have been offered through various companies in the Netherlands through the Start Foundation, and they do pure open hiring, so similar to us with the list. And there's a checklist that they have to go through, the companies that are want-to-be practitioners, where we want to make sure, they're getting a wage, they're not being treated differently, or I should say a living wage. They're not being treated differently than the other employees. There's a whole checklist that they go through to make sure that this is true open hiring, and you're not just kind of gaming the system to get people to come in and then you do something that's totally not in hiring. So in that sense, yes, but in the Netherlands, that's being practiced in that part of Europe. But also prior to the Body Shop's takeover by Aurelius, the private equity firm, the Body Shop was providing, as of last year, 6,500 opportunities across Australia, US, UK, and Canada in their distribution centers and their retail operations. Phenomenal.
Huge opportunity.
It was phenomenal what they were doing, the people that they were brought in. If you look at the demographics from race to age to gender, and the impact that it had on those individuals and the impact that it had on the company in terms of cutting retention, cutting their turnover rate, in terms of people leaving the organization, productivity. They even did a study for one of the UK operations where they saw sales go up. So to see what's happening now in terms of the operations ceasing in a good portion of those regions, except for Australia, it's really tragic. But the results were there, and we could say that it was a success for these last 5 years. And I just hope and pray that it continues, but that part of the story was yet to be written.
I actually want to come back to that if we have time, Joe, because the reason why a private equity company would tear down hiring practices that ostensibly are working very well is fascinating to me. But I'm not going to go into that rabbit hole unless we have the time.
That's a part two.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a topic that Greyston pioneered. You have the foundation, which is largely dedicated to kind of this education and expansion of this. You guys have certainly elevated and one could argue perfected this. But I want to hear a bit more, just really quickly, about like what are the pros to the business, as you were just describing, as well as the opportunities. I mean, I guess the pros for not only the individuals, but also for kind of broader society of open hiring.
Yeah, and let's go with the pros, and we can talk about the cons, particularly for the business, which is where I come from, and I know that's. Look, no matter where you are, the business wants to know, like, what does this mean for me from a bottom line perspective? So for one, and we saw this with the Body Shop, was the productivity increased 13% when they implemented open hiring in their distribution centers. They, 2/3 almost, they cut their turnover rate in terms of people leaving the organization, but also the folks that were like temp to perm, that number doubled over time. You're getting good people, they're staying. And then here's the other piece of that. It is an amazing pipeline of talent. I just mentioned the distribution of ethnicity, the distribution of age, the distribution of gender. These are entry-level positions. So these are your future coordinators, associates, managers. it's an amazing pipeline, and we got to see, over time how they were promoting folks. We honored the body shop at our gala back in 2022 at our 40th. We got to meet a young lady who started out as one of the entry level workers that went through open hiring in the retail operation, and I think she had been promoted twice since we honored them. That's the benefit of it to the business. Good people that stay, that produce, your sales increase. And look, and I know the terms probably have gotten maligned over the last few years, but it is an amazing ESG DEI strategy for the reasons that I just gave you in terms of the distribution of diversity that you have. So those are the pros. I would say the challenge that you have with a corporation, and I'm not naive to think that this is not a radical concept. If you tell the classically trained HR person that, oh no, they're not going to interview anymore, you're going to, in their mind, lose control of who's going to come into your organization. This might be a threat to your core values or a threat to your safety. Those are the things we have to overcome and get people used to. And particularly for the larger organizations, that takes time to socialize. They need to see it in operation. They need to talk to our human resources director and really see what that's all about. And I tell people, look, we have no other issues that any other bakery manufacturing facility would have in terms of attendance, in terms of people acting out, all the bad things that you think would happen. But I've been here a total of 6 years, 4 years as CEO. We haven't had any, grave situations outside of what you would normally see in a manufacturing environment. So a lot of the challenges is kind of overcoming kind of the misconceptions that people have. And also, you really just have to have a mind shift. You really have to just think differently about how you look at your hiring practices, but also where you're sourcing that talent from. And then that's the work that we have to do. And it's not easy, and it takes time. I mean, it took 5 years with the body shop to get to where they were in 2023. So I don't think this is an easy lift, but it is something, if you want to invest in people and you want to do something that's good for your business and good for society, it is definitely a good strategy from a business model standpoint.
It's a fascinating one too, and I like the fact that you came in, from after your corporate stint, not of decades, and then your many years in public service. I think this is an interesting hybrid. But you came in 2018, really driving, I guess, what the workforce development and community wellness initiatives from both a strategy and action perspective. What did you learn in that role about, let's just say, both workforce development, which is a hot topic, L&D type, learning and development type stuff for this particular population of hires that are at that entry level and growing, but also about public-private partnership?
Yeah. Oh, there's so much in that question. Very good question. So before I came to Grayston, I mean, I was in elected office and appointed office, but my last stint with the county of Westchester was as Deputy Commissioner of Social Services, and part of my portfolio included employment. So I had a heart and just a passion for seeing people, particularly those with barriers that couldn't pay their child support because they couldn't get a job, because they had a record, and it just, this vicious cycle of poverty, it drove me crazy. It's like, why is our public policy making it harder for people to turn their lives around? And when I found out about Grayston and what they were doing, both from at the bakery standpoint of open hiring, but all of the workforce education and training that we were doing here, it was actually giving opportunity for folks to get trained, whether it's at the bakery or get trained in another industry where you can get like an entry level certification in an emerging industry. Those are the kind of solutions that I saw that could help the population that I was serving at the county. But then I saw the opportunity that we had with other businesses, because the bakery's small, 100 people or less. So the amount of people that we could impact versus the number of folks with barriers to employment across this country and really around the world is huge. But if every private company could do that, just think of the impact that we could have. So from a foundation standpoint, we do the training, we do the job development services, we have the social services wraparound support, we have a transitional employment program, but it's really working with the local businesses that know us, and we do quality work from a training standpoint and a work readiness standpoint, that we can provide you with someone who we believe fits what you need. And you get a good employee, and we get the benefit of having one of our graduates, as we call them, alumni, work in your organization. And for us, that's a win-win, because at the end of the day, whether it's the bakery or the foundation, we want to give that person with one or more barriers to employment an opportunity that puts them on a career path where they can become self-sufficient in whatever it is, whether it's at the bakery or somewhere else.
And of course, that benefits all of society, as you saw at county level, and I mean certainly at any state or federal level. It's just increasing.
And it's economic impact, because you're getting people off public assistance. They're diverting them away from the criminal justice system, so that is a savings, because that's a cost to society. But they're getting the person that was out of the workforce, not included in the unemployment numbers, is now working, earning a salary, generating an income in whatever municipality you find them in. That is
getting a satisfaction, presumably, which we all deserve and need.
And I say that's the win-win-win strategy of open hiring. It's a win for the person that you're hiring. It's a win for the company that hires the person. It's a win for the society that they're a part of. But it takes time. This is not a slam dunk.
So we talked a little bit. I mean, there are some barriers. It seems radical, hyper progressive. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I just met with a veterans group who's trying to get veterans and veterans' wives placed, right? Sometimes that's very challenging depending on the situation. Veterans' wives, because they move around a lot. Veterans sometimes because they have psychological and or physical disabilities coming out of their service to our country or other countries as well. It seems to me that there's quite a lot of need in the entry level, and there's also and especially if we want to bring manufacturing back to America and things like the green transition or any number of other things to compete in the world's economy. But there's also this barrier, this attitudinal barrier. Who are some of the other organizations besides you guys who, whether they're nonprofits, whether they're political leaders, whether they're, employment groups who are pushing this open hiring as an agenda, and I say an agenda, but really as a solution?
Yeah, I would say a few. I mentioned the Start Foundation in the Netherlands that's really dedicated to strictly open hiring, pure open hiring, and it is purest form. But there's also a manufacturer, not open hiring, but I would say more inclusive employment, Nehemiah Manufacturing in Ohio. They provide kind of a wraparound support. They're working with nonprofits to get employees similar with barriers to employment, working for them. They make my kid's young, the little boogie wipes. So they make those things, but they do inclusive employment. He's a former CPG guy, the CEO there, Danny Meyer. They have a very good track record. There's a great book out by Jeffrey Krasanik. I don't know if you've read that book. Title's escaping me right now, but just Google Jeffrey Krasanik. He presents that economic business case study, and I recommend that book to anybody who's interested in the field. And Grayson is obviously mentioned in there. I would read that book if you want to learn about inclusive employment, open hiring, what that could mean for the business and how there is a strong business case to be made for that. I think that's really what's going to push the corporates over. And I'm talking about the non-purpose corporates. So, not the non-B Corp, the non-IKEAs, the non-body shops.
Well, just call it capitalists.
Yeah, so it's really pushing those other companies to really consider this as a tool for their talent management strategy.
And are there some public-private partnerships in play that are working, that you guys are pushing or that are working? I mean, or is this just such a hot, there's so many things that seem to have become, electrified these days, and politicians aren't touching them?
I give kudos to our mayor here in Yonkers, New York, which is where we're located.
Just outside of New York City.
Yeah, exactly, where we're headquartered. The mayor, the city council, they have been supporting our transitional employment program called the Rangers at least 6 years now. And that started it's kind of evolved over the years. It was dedicated to veterans, and it was dedicated to those who were criminally and justice involved. Now it's just anybody with barriers to employment, but we still seem to recruit more folks that have some type of justice involvement. That's been a great partnership for us. And obviously, our trainings are supported by, WIOA funding, Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act funding that pays for the trainings that the folks have. And then those are partnerships we have with the city, with the county of Westchester. Our local, state senator, Andrew Stewart Cousins, is the Senate Majority Leader in New York. Very big fan and great partner for Grayston. All the way up to the governor, really, Kathy Hochul, that support us. So from the city all the way up to the state and our U.S. senators, the partnership is great. But again, it's also the business partners that we do have. Obviously, Ben & Jerry's Unilever supports the bakery in a major way, and that provides the jobs from through that manufacturer for the brownies for their ice cream. That's been a great partnership now. It's going to be almost 40 years with them. But Whole Foods is another one. Kava is another. We provide brownies for them. So the partnerships, whether it's the bakery or whether it's the foundation and our employment partners, we call them inclusive employment partners that hire all of our graduates. That's what makes this work. We can't do it alone. We have to be involved with education institutions, local government, business, and that's how all this is going to work. And no one group can do it by itself. It has to be a partnership of different stakeholders, not just us.
It makes a lot of sense. I'm watching time, so I have just two last questions for you, Joe, and I know we can talk about this a lot.
We can go on.
Exactly. You are considered and are an expert in purpose-driven business. You sit on boards of Conscious Capitalism Mid-Region. You've been involved with B Corps, benefit corporations for people who don't know. You've been interviewed on this subject. You've written on this subject, et cetera. Where do you see kind of like the next 5 to 10 years going in terms of open hiring and just really this kind of purpose-driven business?
Look, we have to be honest with where we are now in society, and there's been some shade cast on ESG, DEI, and we just have to persevere through that. To me, you cannot continue to ignore folks who are on the sidelines. We as business leaders, as corporations, whatever it might be, government officials, there is a swath of people out there that are removed from the labor force. And it behooves us, if we are really serious about providing a real social safety net or providing economic opportunity and economic development, which is what I see open hiring and what we do as economic development. If we're really serious about those things, we have to keep going. So the next 5 years is just continuing to push the case and demonstrate how this can work, how you can get good employees, how these folks want to be trained. And that's the other thing that I would mention here. We're not forcing anybody to do anything. These are folks that have resolved they want to be successful. They want to take care of their family. They want to get out of the situation that they're in. If we have the opportunity to do that as a business leader, as a company, why wouldn't we provide that? But you're seeing it from the 2016 election till now. There's a lot of angst and uncertainty out there. And if we don't provide a solution for folks that's real and meaningful, I don't know where this country is going to be. And we just can't continue the trajectory that we're on and have people languishing in poverty, languishing in public assistance or in the criminal justice system. That says a lot about your society. And
most certainly does, especially when you're the
I don't want that
economic driver in the world. It makes absolutely no sense.
And I don't want that reputation. So for us, for me, it's just continuing to persevere and kind of get over this hump that we're in right now. But this is work. This is not easy stuff. This is work.
Quickly, 20 years from now, if you could paint your utopia.
If you're talking utopia, to me, it's every major business out there is doing some type of inclusive employment. Again, it doesn't have to be open hiring. And you didn't ask this, but I'll say it anyway. Open hiring is not going to fit every case. So, financial services, for instance, no, you're not going to be able to do open hiring. But I want to see where businesses are taking these cohorts, single parents, plus 50 years old, veterans, criminal justice involved, finding ways to get folks integrated into the economic mainstream, whatever that might mean for your business or the context that you're in. That's what I would love to see.
Hallelujah. Me too. Well, Joseph Kenner, CEO of Grayston Bakery and Foundation in Yonkers, New York. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Future of XYZ. Open hiring is such It seems so obvious, and somehow it's not.
Well, check us out on Grayston.org. We'd love to engage with you.
And order some brownies. They're delicious.
There we go. There you go. Go to the website. It's all there. Donate, replicate, or buy a brownie.
Or all three. Thank you again. And for everyone watching and listening, make sure that you leave us a 5-star review on Apple or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can watch us on our presenting partner, ripbs.org/XYZ, or follow us on Instagram. If you're interested in learning more or following up with someone or yourself as a future guest, visit future-of.xyz. And otherwise, we will see you in 2 weeks' time. Joe, thank you again, and take care.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.